Welcome back to another edition of Rockets Wireside Chat presented by AT&T. I am Craig Ackerman. This week, my guests are, on one hand, my colleague, Matt Thomas, who not only calls Rockets games on the radio, but also serves as the Rockets PA announcer for home games and has an afternoon sports talk show on Sports Talk 790, the Rockets flagship station. Matt is joining us. Matt, we appreciate it. Welcome.
Craig, how are things, my friend? I missed the incredible 1-2 punch that is Rockets Radio with you.
I forgot that. Yes, we are the incredible 1-2 punch, and I hope to be united once again very, very soon. And also joining us is Dave Hardisty. Now, Dave is I don't know exactly what his official title is, but I'm going to glorify it. He's the founder, president, and CEO of ClutchFans.com. Dave, great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys. I'm counting the days until we get to hear you guys on the call again.
Yeah, we have lots to get to in this episode. We're going to obviously talk about the NBA's plans for the restart of the season, and also everybody's celebrating the 25th year anniversary of the Rockets' second championship in 1995. So let's start there. Matt, with you. You were the public PA announcer way back when you had hair. And you know
already the jabs are coming in. This is great.
Well, this show is going to be fun. It's going to be lively. It's going to be fast moving. But what the show will not have is hair.
That's true. We are the most phonically challenged trio, perhaps, in the Rocket Zoom history.
Let me tell you something. I purposely do this. If I wanted to, I could grow it out, just as for the record.
You are a fashionista. That's what I call you.
All right, Matt. 1995 NBA Finals. The Rockets winning their second straight. What do you remember most about that time?
So many vivid memories. I was 23 years old doing the public address. So I was at Kid in the Candy Store, had absolutely the best seat in the house like I do now for the home games. I remember, frankly, going to Orlando for the games 1 and 2 and covering up for the radio station I was working for at the time, watching Nick Anderson right in front of me miss those shots, free throws. The Rockets overcame that huge deficit early on. I remember the electricity in the buildings for Game 3 when the Rockets came back being up 2-0. And I remember before that, going to San Antonio for the NBA Western Conference Finals and watching David Robinson win his MVP award, and then Elijah Schoolden with one of the most amazing performances in Dream's life. Kiss of Death, obviously. And then one thing I brought up today, I had Clyde Drexler on my radio show, and I'll give you one little backstory. It was a Rockets-Clippers game in the middle of February when he was traded from Portland to Houston, and I was sick as a dog. I could just tell I had a terrible fever. But the trade went down, and so the show must go on. So I'm in the arena, and I hear that Clyde's going to be there at some point. They need to be ready to announce his name.
From the University of Houston, by Slamma Jamma, Clyde, the Clyde Drexler!
And he came through, and it's a legendary photo or video if you've ever seen it. Clyde walks in the middle of the summit at the time, wearing one of those gaudy 1990s Houston Rockets hats, and announced it, excited to finish the Rockets-Clippers game, went right home, got up in the morning, went to the doctor, and they did a test, and I had mononucleosis. And I missed the next 2.5 to 3 weeks of games the night right after announcing Clyde's name. So it was a great moment. I wasn't going to miss it. But let's not tell anybody. I probably shouldn't have been there.
Yeah, Dave, hopefully you were healthy during that time period.
Oh, yeah. To me, I think what sticks out about that whole time was how improbable it really was. I think now people look back and they say back-to-back champions, but really it was a completely different team. Even though a lot of the core was intact, it was a different team than the year before. They had, since the Drexler trade, had been about a 500, I think maybe one game below 500 team. And of course, Akeem and Vernon had sat out a stretch. They lost Vernon after game 1, the kind of blow up in Utah. I think as a fan, we had just come off this euphoria from winning it all the year before because Houston had never won a title. It was so incredible. We were just hoping that they would not just, I don't want to say embarrass themselves because they were a competitive team, but we just, I kept thinking if they could just beat Utah, then I'll be happy. And then when they got to Phoenix, I'm like, could you imagine if they could beat Phoenix? And that's how it went. I mean, it was so improbable. They were 1-7 against the teams they faced in the Western Conference Finals and the NBA Finals, and they were 8-2 against them in the playoffs. to me, they just came together at the exact right time. There was nothing that said 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗖𝗧 and this group was going to tear through the finals as the 6th seed. That's what I think made it so improbable. And me, at the time, I was a college student in Utah. So I was, I know how Utah wanted that season. They had big banners. It's our year. It was all based on that being the season for the Utah Jazz. So for the Rockets to drop them, it was pretty amazing and personally gratifying as well.
First 6th seed ever to win a championship, and you could make a strong argument that was the most difficult road any team has had to take to win a championship as they went through, Utah, Phoenix, San Antonio. These were all the top 3 seeds, right? They went through in the West, and Orlando was the top seed in the East. It was a remarkable playoff run.
Yeah, and I think they had won 7 straight road games, if I'm not mistaken. And so many of those games, I mean, as Matt pointed out earlier, they were getting crushed in game 1 in Orlando. And I think I remember thinking at that time, watching it live, like, okay, they got to the finals. They had this incredibly exhausting series against the Spurs. They probably don't have a chance against Penny and Shaq. They had been 0-2 against them in the regular season. And they just turned it around. I think there were so many moments in that series where their backs were to the wall or they were counted out. Excuse me, not in the series, in the playoffs. And they just came back and made magic happen. And I think that's what, I think it gets overlooked a little bit, but probably one of the greatest comeback or underdog stories the NBA has ever seen.
And speaking of overlooking, I thought the Orlando Magic, we frankly, as a basketball society, have overlooked the Orlando Magic, how good they were. I know that if you guys are like I am, I'm watching a lot of old NBA TV games. They beat the Chicago Bulls with a healthy Michael Jordan, who changed his number from 45 back to 23. They beat a good Indiana team. They beat the Knicks. I mean, this is a team that was led by a young Shaq. Penny was growing. Dennis Scott, Horace Grant. I mean, they had a really, really good basketball team. And so while during this last dance era where everything is all Chicago Bulls and everybody else is an afterthought, that Magic team was excellent. So needless to say, to sweep anybody in the finals is great, but to do it against a really talented young team that was supposed to be on the uptick, and they were, I think we have, as historians, have not done enough due diligence and done enough, giving them enough props to say how good that Orlando team really was.
What stands out to me was the energy in the city. Obviously, that was duplicated when the Astros have ended up winning the World Series in their run up to the series, and that was the first time since the mid-1990s that you could really feel that energy in the city, but it was palpable, right? I mean, there was so much excitement in the city for what the Rockets were doing, both in 1994 and then again in 1995, as we've already discussed, for different reasons, because of the improbability of that second championship run.
Yeah, the first year of the championship, I partied really, really hard. In fact, I partied probably too hard. And I'll just say that my car door was open on my Wagoneer that I had at the time. And
So wait, you're talking about mono and a Wagoneer all in the same show.
I know.
You sure you don't want this edited out?
No, go ahead and put it in there. Okay. But I had my wallet and my paycheck. There was no direct deposit back then. And my car door was open, and I was on Richmond Avenue and fell asleep because I had embellished too much on things. And nothing was taken, and the city was great. Richmond Avenue, remember, you can see some of the helicopter shots the TV cameras would have in 94. Everybody behaved themselves, and that was the place to be. That's one of the great things, is that we were great championship city, and we behaved ourselves. There was no threats of violence. Nobody got hurt. There was no vandalism. And so I know that we as Houstonians, whether it's the Rockets or any other team, can celebrate responsibly.
It was, in my opinion, a truly special team. And I don't want to say necessarily that this current Rockets team is the 95 Rockets. I'm not saying that at all. But I think when you have a team like the current Rockets as well, that has a couple of superstar talents, it just reminds you, when they roll the ball out there, anything can happen. I mean, I think the Rockets, right now where they are floating around mid-seed in the West, especially with a guy like Russ, who's just all out all the time, anything can happen. Again, you don't see magic happen like that very often in the NBA, but it just reminds you that it's possible, no matter where you're seated.
Before we take a step forward, let's take one further step back. Obviously, Rudy Tomjanovich, heck of a player in college, all-star career as an NBA player. won a couple of championships as a head coach, finally getting his just due, being inducted into the Hall of Fame. Dave, your thoughts on what that means to the Rockets fan base out there, that one of their own, Rudy Tomjanovich, who again should have been in there a long time ago, but it's about time. Rudy T, a Hall of Famer. That sounds great.
I was so happy for him. I mean, he's a Hall of Fame guy, has been his whole career. You pretty much broke it down. I mean, as a player, he was a great player, but what he did as a coach, that should have cemented him. He should have been in a long time ago, in my opinion. I think maybe sometimes when you have a player like Hakeem, who was so great, it can maybe take the shine off of a coach a little bit for whatever reason. But I mean, Rudy T, he was the guy who had those guys ready to go and prepared when their backs were to the wall. And I think the coaching job that he did, for his whole career, but especially those 2 seasons, that should have put him in for sure. So I was very happy to see him in there.
The greatest thing about Rudy Tomjanovich was originally when Don Chaney was fired, he thought it would be Carol Dawson's job and was very apprehensive about taking it. But because of the health concerns and things that had happened in Carol's life, he knew that the stress of being a head coach might be too much for him. So, Craig, what I appreciate about Rudy is he was a great player, but he didn't decide he wanted to become a head coach right away. He was a scout for a long time, an assistant coach. He worked his way up, and he didn't have to do that in Houston, Texas. He was Houston Rocket royalty, obviously pre-Elijah, pre-Sampson. So for a guy that paid his dues, got a just reward, and in our business, in my business especially, when I talk to coaches of all different sports, I hate to tell you all this, but there's a lot of jerks out there. Rudy is one of the sweetest, most affable people you'll ever want to meet. And it's, sometimes you get too close to somebody and you root too hard. I might have been in that case. And so not only was I happy to see him win 2 championships, but when the call from the Hall finally came through, it was way too late, but certainly something we can all celebrate down the road.
Yeah, I think it speaks volumes. All of his ex-players, many of his ex-players say that he's the best coach they've ever played for. And this includes guys like Robert Horry, who have played for Greg Popovich and Phil Jackson. And all these guys who used to play for Rudy T are just super happy, super excited. And I hope that everybody can be there in person for this, because I think that this group of people who accomplished these goals deserve to celebrate this together one more time with Rudy going to the Hall of Fame.
The second championship especially, because think about this, that Rocket team that won the first title, Otis Thorpe, very popular in that locker room, Vernon Maxwell for sure. And, Rudy and Leslie Alexander and other folks in the Rockets front office, they knew they had to get better. They knew that the current situation wasn't going to be good enough to knock off a very good team like San Antonio. As Dave mentioned, Utah was on the come as well. So it took a special coach to massage that locker room, because Clyde was an alpha dog in Portland. And Clyde still very much was an alpha dog here in Houston, but this was still Hakeem Olajuwon's team. So my guess is if we had a chance, guys, to really go back and talk to Rudy about some of the stories behind that, that's where he may have done his best coaching, because he had to change his team around to bring in a superstar scorer, bring in what he brings to the table, while at the same time changing out some very popular members of the team. And look, the Vernon Maxwell situation was rough towards the end, but moving Otis and making the dramatic move they did, it obviously had a huge payoff winning the championship, but it was a risky move nevertheless.
It was a very gutsy move. At the time, I remember that trade deadline. I was always, consumed by rumors and trade rumors and loved that stuff. It was Scottie Pippen who was on the block, and the Rockets, just vague little rumors about pursuing him. But it was, for the Rockets standpoint, it was all about Robert Horry getting traded. When they acquired Drexler, it was like a shock that it was Otis Thorpe. And I remember at the time the rumor was Kendall Gill, or that Drexler was going to get traded to Seattle for Kendall Gill, and I didn't see Drexler as a possibility here in Houston based on the rumors. And that's just, Drexler for Thorpe came out of nowhere. I didn't think Thorpe was going to get traded at all. And if you remember, Portland had like 4 power forwards at the time already. So, I don't want to change the subject from Rudy T to that trade necessarily, but it was a very gutsy move to trade a core piece, like Matt said, in Otis Thorpe. And, Rudy deserves a ton of credit for making sort of a different, like I said, a different team than it was the year before. And that year before was the defending champions.
All right, let's talk about the current team. Still a lot of moving parts with the restart of the NBA season, but as of today, as we are discussing this, it does appear as if it is going to be a go in Orlando. Dave, what was your reaction when you first? And look, we've been hearing about this for a while now, but not up until the last couple of weeks have there been sort of some dates and some light at the end of the tunnel. What was your reaction to finally seeing that light at the end of the tunnel, that this season might end up restarting?
Well, I'm excited. I'm happy that they're going to do it. I can honestly say it feels like an entirely different season, right? I mean, we've had now 3 months gap. It feels just like an NBA offseason that we've gone through. But I feel like any team like the Rockets, the Clippers, the Lakers, that have kind of traded future pieces for the now, really can't afford a lost season. The Rockets have a great opportunity to win it all. They're probably not exactly seated where they want to be, so they've got to try to place an importance on these last 8-10 games. But I think it's great news for the Rockets. I feel like Harden and Westbrook, from everything we've seen, are focused and staying in great shape. And again, I hate to use the word gimmick, but they are a very unique team in that they don't run a center, and they have a point guard who's a dominant force, but can't shoot threes, and yet they're a team that shoots tons of threes. So it's a really unique team. And I think it's going to be interesting to see who they get paired up against eventually. And, I think it's going to take some adjusting from our standpoint as fans watching these games without fans in the seats and the sounds and different things of that nature. But I'm really excited the season's coming back. I think the Rockets have a decent chance to make some noise here in the playoffs, and we'll see what happens.
Matt, your thoughts?
Craig, I hate to do this to you because we're supposed to have opinions about this. I don't know what to expect. I really don't. I don't know who's going to not go. I don't know who's in shape, who's not in shape. I can tell you that Eric Gordon's time away from the court probably has helped him in terms of his recuperation. I can tell you that PJ Tucker, who always is a concern about the number of minutes he plays, probably took the most of this time and relaxed and got his body. But at the same time, I'll use one example. Chris Paul's a guy that's always tended to, unfortunately, break down towards the end of seasons. He's got to feel in pretty good shape. What is LeBron and his teammates going to be doing? Are the Clippers built for this? I'm so excited and nervous about it all because I do think home courts make a big difference. I do think jumping on a plane and flying somewhere 3-4 hours in a short period of time makes a difference. And when you're putting all these guys in one little area, the team that can focus on basketball exclusively and adhere to all the new rules that would be put into place will have the best championship. That's why I think a veteran-laden team, especially, Craig, and this is where the Rockets come into play, that don't know what it's like to taste a championship, can see maybe a little light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why I think the Rockets, according to Vegas, and you take it for what it's worth, has moved them up the charts of being a potential championship contender because you've got James, you've got Eric, and you've got Russ, who are all, and PJ for that matter, all thirsting for a championship.
Well, look, again, as you mentioned, nobody really knows how everybody's ultimately going to react to this situation until they are in this situation. But it does, and maybe we're a little biased because we are, and
Sure.
we follow the Rockets more closely than other teams, but it does seem like the vast majority of the discussion in regards to the Rockets and the restart is that this is a group and organization that is singularly focused on getting there and winning. They're committed to being there. They want to be there. I think the Rockets, at least as of right now, as we sit, will be as focused of a team that will be in Orlando in terms of this is what we need to do, this is what we have to do to get it, and going out there and trying to win this under these unique circumstances.
That's great to hear because I agree with you. They have a lot of veteran guys. They have guys who are hungry. I certainly had PJ Russ come to mind. Harden, Harden looks like he's in better shape. He looks ready to go.
Skinny James Harden, huh?
Well, I'm hoping certain trends continue. Westbrook's been absolutely brilliant. It's hard to look at trends from 3 months ago, right? I'm sure things are going to be totally different, but for him, those final 30 games, averaging 31 points, shooting 51% from the field, and really, straying away from the 3-point shot. As he did early on, he was like taking them a lot because that's what the Rockets do. And then he started to realize, hey, I'm going to focus on my strengths, attacking the basket, and just with the changes the Rockets made, I think he could be outstanding. I'm excited to hear that because I think they do have a unique chance. They're going to be a difficult out. There's some teams I think that could give them a tough time, but I think the Rockets are going to be a tough matchup for a lot of teams, given the way they play.
Everybody, though, in the same boat. So it's not like, one team has had more time together versus the other. Everybody's playing under the same rules, under the same, set of circumstances and so forth. And a lot, Matt, has been talked and made, and I know Mike D'Antoni's talked about it. Daryl Morey's mentioned it, about the opportunity for what is, in essence, a brand new group. Look, this team changed dramatically in and around the trade deadline, brought in a whole host of new rotation players. Clint Capella was sent to Atlanta, so they're playing without a starting center. They had immediately they had a lot of success, and then they hit the skids with the losing streak, busted out of it in their last game before the suspension of the season with their win at home against Minnesota. But they've talked about, and I think this is a pretty important point. Now, again, the same can be said for every team in the league, but this brand new group is going to have a couple, 3-4 weeks to have a training camp again with each other. Matt, how do you think that will benefit this team? Will it benefit this team?
I don't know if you guys agree or not on this, but I almost feel like, and I know that you're not supposed to, but should we even think about what the first 65 games were of the season? I mean, this has been such a long layoff. This is almost like a brand new mini season. Now, obviously, you can't treat it that way because you're going to be inheriting what you already made in terms of wins and losses. You've only got 8 games to kind of reseed yourself. But I don't know. I mean, the Rockets weren't playing great basketball before we left for the virus. The one victory against Minnesota, am I supposed to take that and go, well, this is a new Rocket team? I mean, this is also the same Rocket team, Craig, that went to Los Angeles in the very first game post-trade and beat the Lakers on their home floor. That feels like 5 years ago. So to give you another unfortunate, incomplete answer, I think we're going to see a brand new set of basketball teams out there. I want to see who gives a damn, who wants to really win this thing, or who's doing it for just to collect the paycheck, or who's doing it just for to finish out a season and get tenure. I don't know, but I think, again, veteran teams, especially those that don't have a ring on their finger, are going to really, really put out maximum effort. And I think that's why part of the schedule, whatever comes out of it, will be interesting. How many times the Lakers play a non-playoff team, a Sacramento or Portland? How many times the Rockets play a Portland or whatever the case may be, or the Lakers? So I'm excited about it. I'm very nervous, but I certainly think that James and Russ and PJ and Eric, like I said before, are the guys that can say, if there's anybody that deserves it, it should be us, because we're putting in the time. We've seen the videos. We've seen the IGs. We've seen some of the audio and video conversations. They're not just sitting around eating bonbons. They're working to try to be better in the case that we do play basketball again this year.
I've been sitting around eating bonbons, just as an FYI.
What are your favorite flavors? I want to know.
I'm more of a candy guy, but that was just a phrase. That was a Married with Children reference.
I
was it not?
I like to cross-reference things. You know me. I do miss the treats when we travel on the road, especially with Bull. Bullard's a master dessert eater, and we could be going out and having Brussels sprouts and lettuce, and he'll still want a brownie a la mode when it's all said and done.
Yeah, 6'10" with a hollow leg. He can put it away. Dave, what do you think about the format that the league is going to put forth? Again, there's still some things they need to work out with the players, a lot of moving parts. Some of this stuff can change. But as we know it as of right now, international players should either be back in their markets or on their way back to their home markets, followed by next week, every player reporting to their home market. Then they start testing. And then about a week, 10 days later, they start training camp in their home markets. And then shortly after that, everybody then will move to Orlando. We'll be in Orlando for a 3-week training camp, followed by the start of the season, which as of right now appears to be July the 30th. Dave, your thoughts on how the NBA is approaching this format and how do you think it's going to play out?
Well, I give them a lot of credit. I mean, you look at, like baseball's having a hard time figuring out how to even get a new season started, and the NBA is forward thinking. They're pushing hard for this. It's bold. I'll say that because it's tough to imagine all these players sort of isolated and things of that nature. I think as far as the NBA season, I agree with Matt. It feels like a new season. I think 8 games for some players. I think some players will be out of shape and brief training camp and then the games before the playoffs start. I thought it was an interesting precedent. I know it's kind of this is a minor thing, but first 8 teams to be sent home. I still look at the draft standpoint and I think about how that kind of sets a precedent of like, hey, this is saying that these teams don't matter quite as much when they're that far behind. Obviously it's always important for teams to remain competitive, but I thought it was an interesting decision. I like it. I mean, I think there was only 15 games or so remaining in the season as it was, if I'm not mistaken. 8 games is, I think, enough to get them ramped up. And then we go right into the playoffs and they keep the same structure there. So I think it's bold. I think it's we'll see if they're actually able to execute it and everyone is on board and sort of stays. I do worry a little bit. Hey, if we have a couple of people test positive, what that's going to do. Just given how we saw, Rudy Gobert tested positive and that shut everything down. But I like what they're doing and I think it can work.
Craig, I think there'll be nothing gimmicky about this. I think baseball is going to be a gimmick if they even play it this year. You're still getting 8 more games, which will put everybody over the 70 threshold. And so the only massive change, frankly, is they're doing in Orlando as compared to their home buildings. That's what the pandemic's going to do, force us to make alterations. So there'll be no asterisks next to this.
And it seems that's been important from the league. They don't want anybody saying that whoever wins the championship, it will be a gimmicky championship where you put the asterisk on there. It seems like the league has been very cognizant of that. Hence, that's why they want full 7-game series in every playoff round. Yeah,
and that'll give us a chance again to get these guys in. The best team will win. Whoever's going to win this championship, guys, is going to win. How many does it take? 15 wins to win a championship? 16? Whatever the case may be. I mean, there'll be nothing fluky about this. Who goes to Orlando and wins the most and doesn't, catch a team in a best of 3 or a one-and-done kind of thing will be the NBA champion. And they should be glad to have that trophy around them and have a parade when we can have parades again. But yeah, I think the number one thing they did accurately out of the whole thing was let's not mix the teams up. Let's not do a World Cup play-in round, or let's do a one and done. Let's be as authentic as humanly possible. And I think that gained a lot of credibility with fans of saying, yeah, whoever is crowned champion is going to really earn it.
And fans are so thirsty to start watching games again. I mean, we are all ready to watch some competitive sports, and the NBA's, the best in the business, in my opinion, the most fun sport to watch. I'm excited for it to get going, and I think, certainly the country is dying to see it again.
Yeah, and Matt, you touched upon this a little bit, but there's a lot going on in our country right now. The pandemic is not over. We're all dealing with that. There's the Black Lives Matter movement and how important that is to this league, to the players in this league. There have been players who have spoken up publicly, but there does seem to be somewhat of a difference of opinion amongst players on how they and the league should approach this restart. Do you think this will ultimately impact the play on the floor? Matt, as you mentioned, there may be some players who decide that for a variety of reasons, they just don't feel that the time is right to even play.
Yeah, I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall in that call. I guess there was 200 players. Guys, let's be honest. You get 200 people of anybody, any group, they're going to disagree on some things. So whatever they had to say, I'm glad they said it. I'm glad they're being forthcoming with it. I think there were some that felt like that they didn't get their voice heard when the original vote was put into play. My own opinion, and it's because I'm a sports fan, but I think the NBA players, any professional athletes, have a very strong voice, and they get to be heard through an amazing platform called television. And when you get to put your games on and you get to talk and you get to be on a campus, and there's going to be a lot of feature stories done and a lot of things around the league before we get started, I think the easiest way to really affect change and to get your opinion out there is by being on the court. I think sports is there to help rally us. And if there's a messaging to be sent during these games, I'm all for it. So I don't think it's in the best interest for the players to not go and play. Now, if there are serious COVID concerns, which, everybody's going to have their own level of worry on that, that's one thing. But I think the best way, and I think Austin has certainly said it in the last couple of days, Pat Beverly has said it and others have said it, is that if you got a message, get it out there through the games, whether it's wearing shirts, whether it's a prayer before the game that's maybe off the norm of what we've done in the past. But these NBA players carry such a powerful message, whether they think they do so or not. And I think they can do it by playing basketball, because it's going to give all of us an opportunity to see what they have to say. Because if they don't go and we cancel the season, then guys like Dwight Howard or anybody else that's, Kyrie Irving is so against this, we're really not going to see what they really have to say. And I think the easiest way for them to tell us what they really mean is by their message they tell us either before, during, or after a basketball game.
Yeah, this is it's been eye-opening for me. I've just sat back and really observed and listened and learned a lot. And I would agree with the sentiment, if Dwight Howard or whatever, that is more important than starting the NBA season. I do agree with that. I agree with Matt, though, in that I think, again, I don't want to speak for the players. They're the ones who play. But I see them having an impact on that movement by playing. Having that voice, being able to go out there and play. And I think it's going to do a lot of good for the country as well. Now, again, it's not, I don't want to make it a selfish standpoint for us to be able to watch them, but I think it can do a lot of good for that movement as well. Them getting back out on the court, letting fans see them and hear them. And I think what's been happening has changed a lot of people's perception and given a lot of people more understanding. And I think that by them being back out on the court and having that voice, they can continue to spread that message.
The Houston Rockets and Fertitta family are excited to launch an online daily auction to benefit the Clutch City Foundation to support COVID-19 relief efforts. Each day, a new one-of-a-kind Rockets item will be available to bid on. Items include autographed basketballs, authentic game-worn shorts, game-issued shoes, jerseys, and more. It's easy to participate. Download the Houston Rockets app, check in each day for the daily item up for auction, and then bid for your chance to win and give back. Head to Rockets.com for more information.
The Rockets online auction is ongoing. You can bid on great items like the 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗡𝗖𝗧 and Shaq's autographed poster from the 1995 NBA Finals. So that's available. And Matt Thomas, are you still doing voice recordings? Can people still get those? Do people want these from you?
Yeah, you know what I've done so far? I've done I'm not listening to you. Dave, it's been a pleasure working with you. I've done high school graduations. I've done 18th birthdays. I've done 2 different upcoming future babies. I've introduced an entire family. I've introduced a text thread of buddies that are all Rocket fans. So it's been some serious, some lineups, some voicemails of people's cell phones. I've done them all. So if you have something that you would like my voice attached to, again, I can introduce your family, whatever. $50 donation to the Clutch City Foundation and for COVID relief, and through the Rockets app. It's really easy, and I usually turn around and get it back to you within 5 to 7 days.
Yeah, Rockets.com, Rockets app, Rockets online charity auction has been awesome. Dave, have you put in a bid in for that poster?
I didn't take a look because I had checked in the auction. It's been a little while since I checked back in, but that is one that would be pretty sweet. I have a lot of Rockets memorabilia that I've collected over the years. I've been a little lax the last couple of years picking up bobbleheads here and there, but I collect media guides and all kinds of Rocket stuff that I have in my office, and that's one that I would love to get.
All right, let's wrap this up. Some final thoughts on what the Rockets need to do between now and then, and what you think they ultimately can accomplish down in Orlando.
First and foremost, they've got a chance to go as high as a 3 seed, Craig. I don't know if number 2 seed's a possibility, but the Utah injury is certainly a huge concern.
Bojan
Bogdanović. Dwight Howard not playing for the Lakers, if he decides to stay with his current course, could be a huge factor with them. They have terrific depth at the 5 spot with JaVale McGee there as well. Just get back into shape, run your routes. And I think once those guys get to Florida, from what I understand, it's not like they're going to be confined to a quarter-mile square radius. I mean, they're going to have some room to do their thing. It's just who's going to be disciplined, because if they're not disciplined, and I'm not talking about just the Rockets, I'm talking about anybody, we don't want another outbreak, because we do not want a stoppage in the season, because there's been so much work and so much due diligence put into it that I would hate for all this hard work and all this preventative maintenance that the league is doing to make sure these players and staffs are in the best condition possible to be ruined because of some cavalier attitudes and not following rules. So if you're jumping on the plane and you are all in, go win a championship. And I look for the Rockets to do that. There's a chance to grab a ring, and it will be authentic, gentlemen. It'll be nothing gimmicky. And I love the fact that whoever goes and gets it, it might be one of the greatest titles ever accomplished because of the fact there won't be a home court. There won't be we had this advantage, and they're all in it together. And this is why I love the game, and I hope that we actually get a chance to see all this happen in the next month or so.
Yeah, I talked to Austin a couple of months ago, and that's the point that he made, that a lot of people at that juncture were making the point that this would be a championship with an asterisk, but he thinks under these circumstances, it might be the most difficult title to win.
Oh, for sure, Craig. There's nothing. I mean, think about it. They're going to play these regular season games in a short period of time to get to the playoffs, and then they're going to be playing every other day. And, oh, by the way, I don't know how you guys if you've talked about this yet, but with television being an issue in this, they're going to be playing in Orlando at very strange times because they're going to play double headers, and they got to take care of the West Coast. So tell me if I'm wrong, but could you not play a game at 10:30 Orlando time? I mean, or playing a game at 1 o'clock during the regular season because you're trying to get as many games on NBA TV. I mean, I think the schedule in itself, whenever it gets released, Craig, is going to be very fascinating.
Final thoughts, Dave.
Well, I think the thing I'm looking for, there was a stretch after the Covington trade where I thought, you know what, this team really has a chance. I think they can win it this year. And I hated to get too far ahead of myself because, as you pointed out, Craig, they did slide just before the season shut down. I think the thing I'm looking for when they get back, and there's many different things, but can James Harden get going from three-point range again? Because I think the final half of the season, he was shooting about 30% flat on high volume, 11, 12 threes a game. If he can get back to that 36, 38% range when he's hot, I think that makes a huge difference for the Rockets going into the playoffs. That's what I'm looking for them to have that edge as far as a championship type of team, because I think defensively they made improvements, taking Capella out, adding Covington, and I think they're all hungry, as you guys pointed out. So I just want to see, can James get back and not, because right now they've had a bit of a liability in both guard spots from three-point range, and so we need James to get going from three again.
I'm excited to see what Jeff Green can continue to do. He was low-key playing great basketball when the season was suspended. I mean, we've talked about all these other guys. But
can I give you one low-key thing, Craig? How about
Okay.
Robert Covington's block shot ability since coming out? I mean,
Yes.
For what Clint was, I mean, he was always in the top 6 and 7 in the NBA in block shots. The Rockets haven't missed a beat in that particular category.
Yeah, to me, the most important thing is, I think as we saw, there are going to be nights where their size discrepancy will be a big-time problem rebounding the ball. But for the most part, I thought under the circumstances, they more than held their own on the glass. I think that's something they're going to have to continue to do moving forward. And I think one thing that was stressed by Mike and the players with this new small ball lineup is that as long as they continue to maintain their ball security, they will make up for whatever rebounding discrepancy that they ultimately have. To me, those are two very important things. And I'm also very excited about the fact that as a league, led by Adam Silver and on the Players Association side by Michelle Roberts and Chris Paul, that it seems like all of the sides, even though, again, there are many things they need to work out, they have a great working relationship with each other, and that under these dire circumstances, I think all sides will be able to come together, and they will, A, figure out how they want to continue their messaging, which is very important, and B, how to maintain an uber competitive atmosphere that will ultimately result in a crowning of a champion who will have deserved winning that championship. So I'm excited. I'm excited. Don't forget to check out the online auction, especially with those items for Matt Thomas. He will introduce you for only $50. Don't let him charge you a nickel more than 50.
Of course, you can give more than 50, Craig, because it benefits the Clutch City Foundation.
But don't give it.
Thomas
but if Matt's emailing you for additional money, don't do it.
You are the worst. I don't miss you that much after all. Dave, I miss you a lot.
All right, so Dave Hardisty
same.
from Clutch Fans, Matt Thomas, my broadcast colleague with the Rockets. Fellas, great to see you. I appreciate the time and very much look forward to the restart of the season. Thank you.
Thanks, Craig.
All right, for Dave and Matt, I'm Craig. Thanks for watching another edition of Wireside Chat presented by AT&T. That's it. All done. Episode over. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe now to get all things Rockets delivered right to you, and we'll chat with you next time.